Dude, I live with those in my ears and I forget that they're there. But welcome to episode number 5 of Real Talk with Julio Sandoval.
And Matt Beatty.
And we have a lot to discuss today because the market has seen some significant change in just like the last 3 weeks since we last... Oh, let me help you out here, buddy.
Am I hanging?
No, you pinched it there. Okay.
I pinched it here.
Yeah.
Am I supposed to pinch it higher? Should I pinch
Yeah,
it
just
higher?
put it on your collar.
Okay, there we go.
There you go. That's good. Yeah, good.
Up against
But a lot has changed, man.
Yeah, a lot.
So the Fed adjourned for the first time of 7 times that they're going to meet this year, and they boosted the federal rate 2.25%. To 0.25%.
Yes.
Or 25 basis points.
They increased it by 0.25%.
Thank you. And before the federal rate was 0, right?
Yes.
So everything you were seeing in terms of interest was just the margins that the bank was
Building into it,
building into it. Yeah.
Yeah, so what you have is a bank has to make money, so that income that it generates comes off of the interest rate.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where the compensation for, paying employees, office suites, things like that are built into those rates. So a lot of people ask, like, how are certain loan officers pricing out things differently? Most mortgage companies are all around the same line because they all have similar style expenses.
Mm-hmm.
But they vary depending on one place versus another because some have office spaces and physical locations that they have to pay for, versus others may not have those locations that affect their bottom line.
Yeah. So some organizations have a lot more overhead than others, so they might need to price that into the loans as well.
Yeah, and what we'll cover today a little bit when we're talking about interest rates is I wanted to kind of touch on the differences in lending, so broker versus wholesale versus direct lending versus in-house, and what changes versus each scenario.
Sure.
So we'll talk about that because that affects interest rates too and certain things that you're looking at.
So the Fed met and they raised rates by 25 basis points or 0.25%. And it seems like the banks already anticipated that and increased the rates ahead of time.
Yes.
Yeah. So rates jumped up before the Fed convened and raised it the 0.25. Now, have mortgage rates gone up again since the Fed met, anticipating the next Fed meeting?
So rates are dependent upon a lot of different factors. The Fed and their baseline investment or requirement for their, prime rate at 0 versus 0.25 is one component among others that factor into the interest rate. So just to simplify, the market is changing in general. So treasury bonds, mortgage-backed securities, all these things have been increasing and that has affected rates as well. The price adjustments, yes, have been factored in by mortgage companies because they know this is coming. So in order to not do a same day type of price change, you're seeing these adjustments happen over time. They both expand and constrict, because of how investors invest into the market, how money is moving, whether it be towards commodities, tech sector, things like that. All of that affects how money's moving and affects our interest rates as well.
Yeah, just prognosticating the future and making the adjustments in advance so you don't shock the system doing everything like on a moment's notice.
Yeah, and there's a lot of things that are factoring into that and have caused the increase in rates. We talked about this on one of the other videos that we had, that it's been since December of last year that we've seen a steady increase in interest rates, all the way up to at least 1% change overall.
You're staying with us.
There it goes again.
Okay, we need a second rock. We're gonna need a bigger boat. Oh, that's funny. Pulp Fiction?
Yeah.
All
Nice
right.
catch. Good job.
Oh gosh, that was funny. bring out the GIMP. Should I edit that out?
No, but
Fudge. Okay. So now I'm like, all right, I'm laughing and I'm sweating.
Now we're going to go on the Pulp Fiction route.
Gosh, I lost my train of thought.
No, I mean, so all that we're saying is that it's been a constant change that's happening because there's multiple factors affecting what's causing rates to climb. And, you know, the Fed is stating that the market is healthy, the job market is healthy, so they feel comfortable in raising the interest rates. And so, you know, we basically are dealing with the aftermath of those conversations to start, and then now into, you know, where we are today with rates at least that 0.25% higher.
Sure. Yeah. So there's just like so much geopolitical stuff going on right now.
Yeah.
You know, that makes me cautiously optimistic, but it's amazing how strong our economy is despite everything that we've been through in the past few years, you know? And it's kind of insane how COVID numbers go way down. They are way down. You know, people are out, people are ready to spend money again, and then they have to fuel up their gas tank before they, you know, go to the movies or go see. and it's just like, oh shucks, you guys just released us into the world, and it's so much more expensive to do anything. I mean, a lot of people literally can't now.
Well, and that's the whole point of the Fed trying to change the interest rates too. It's because they're trying to bring down inflation, the cost of goods. You know, the whole idea of what's happening in Russia and Ukraine, I mean, that's a big factor into our gas prices.
Sure.
But, I mean, everything's more expensive.
Yeah.
You know, cars, food, everything. And it has to do aftermath of supply chain issues, the amount of money that was injected into the economy in the first place to try to keep us, you know, moving forward and not falling to a standstill. So we're trying to get out of that. We're trying to get out of inflation and being at 7%, and that's what the Fed is trying to do with raising the interest rate, is to kind of bring some of that money back in, slow things down a little bit more, and reduce as much spending as is happening.
Sure. Yeah. So you mentioned supply chain issues. So obviously a lot of our supplies come from China.
Yeah.
And China reacts very strongly to COVID-19 and all of its variants. So right now they have a Omicron EV3, or I don't remember the exact name of it, but they literally shut down the factories that we are so dependent on whenever one of these comes through. So yeah, you know, a big issue with the inflation is the supply chain issues, and it's just like this constantly never-ending factories opening and then shutting down. Even Foxconn shuts down, and they make your iPhone, you know? And so like these are major factories that we have become dependent on that are completely susceptible to COVID-19.
Yeah, and you start to track your pennies, you know, as what you're spending on, because things get more expensive. So you start to reduce what you're willing to pay for it, you know? How many subscriptions do you have? You know, are you going to go to the movies that often? How many vacations are you going to take this year? Because of money is becoming limited.
I'm only going on 20 this year. You know? Like we were aiming for 30, but I'm just doing 20 this year.
Yeah, nice.
Divide that by 10.
Right. But it's good to get out. It's good to spend money because it does help the economy overall. It's just like anything, you just have to track your pennies.
Sure.
You know, budget and making sure you know where you're spending your money. And that's going to start to change what's going on in our economy overall.
So I believe, based on everything that I've read, I believe that the inflation is transitory. You know, 4 months ago we were at 7.5% inflation. Now we're at 7.9%. But I really feel like this is the result of macroeconomic policies of the past, having such low rates through such a strong economy for a long time, you know, and then geopolitical pressures with COVID-19 on top of it. But I do believe it's transitory and that the inflation will go down significantly. But the question is Pandora's box open now? And are these, you know, $5 for 2 avocados, is that the new norm, or will they come back down and ease our pocketbooks a little bit?
I think that's the question, is trying to figure out what that new norm is.
Sure.
And even with the housing market and dealing with prices as they are now, where's the balance?
Yeah.
The push and pull in this. The expectation for increase of the market by the end of this year, I think, was like at 5% still.
Of housing prices?
Yeah.
Okay.
Overall in our area, in Long Beach itself. And so we'll see if that remains true,
Sure.
Or does it go higher? Is it less than? And, there's a lot of economic stuff going on where it's supply and demand, affordability, who's buying, what areas are you factoring in? How does that all play out together?
Something really interesting took place, something we haven't seen in a long time. So year to date, we're 20% higher than, and this is based on February numbers. We obviously don't have March numbers yet. Based on February 2022 numbers, year to date, we are 20% higher in median home sales prices, sold prices, than we were, February 2021. But between January and February of 2022, prices have stagnated. There's been zero increase between January and February. So that 5% number, could be very real. And if that's the case, this will be the first time in the last 7 years that we didn't see double-digit gains in median home sale prices.
Yeah. The predictions that are out there for, overall market change and stuff like that was supposed to be 5% this year, and then next year supposed to be even lower at 3%.
So the new affordability index for the state of California has only 25% of Californians can afford to buy at the median, which is $699,000.
Wow.
75% of Californians cannot afford to buy in their own state.
Yeah.
That is just incredible, isn't it?
Yeah. It makes sense, though. If you think about it, just how high prices have gone, the amount of income that's increased, it hasn't. California lost a lot of businesses, a lot of companies back in, 2012 and 10, where we lost like Nissan, Toyota, places like that, moving on to Texas. So when we're talking about, is this the new norm? When it comes to housing, I think we are getting to a place of balance with it. A lot of people ask for, is this mean prices are going to drop? It's hard because there's no supply. That I struggle with feeling as though prices are really going to plummet because we don't have a lot of houses to sell.
No. Actually, right now, year over year, our inventory was so low, so ridiculously low in 2021, and we're 42% less inventory right now than we were a year ago today.
Yeah.
It's just unbelievable. And we're prognosticating even less inventory moving into the spring than there is right now. Yeah. And so home sales across the state are up 16% year over year, but we can't anticipate that simply because of lack of supply. You can't have the sales if you don't have the properties available. Yeah. And so we're just all crossing our fingers and hoping and praying that we get a strong seller's market in the spring. I've got a couple cool properties coming to market this spring, but it's not like, 2016, 2017, 2018, where it's just like, you could go shopping and be up against 2 or 3 offers and win if you really wanted the house.
Yeah.
Now it's like, this is my firstborn Charles, and he comes with my offer.
Yeah, exactly. I know, and it's tough because you have to be very purposeful with your offers, go in there confidently to compete, because there's still buyers out there that you're competing with.
Yeah.
And then the sellers have to have a real strong reason to want to move, to either leave California, the retirees like we've talked about, and taking that money and, investing it in somewhere else and having, more that goes towards their retirement.
Yeah, so I'm anticipating that the Fed is probably going to raise rates 25 basis points each of the 7 times that they promise that they're going to be meeting this year. So that would put us at an increase of 1.75% or 175 basis points. When we met last, rates were around 4%. If you're A paper on a conforming loan right now, what can you anticipate in terms of mortgage rate?
4.5.
4.5. Okay.
On the rate today, on a conforming loan. So if you're looking at 1.75 increase, you're looking at somewhere at 6.25, by 2023.
Okay. Yeah.
I would imagine. Now, the Fed makes their announcements on what they're planning doing on increasing, but with every increase, they always re-examine.
Yeah.
So with everything that happens, they look back and will factor in what's happening in the economy at that time. 2018, they promised 4 different increases. Only 3 ended up happening. And then they pulled back in the February of 2019 to balance out the market because things were moving in the wrong direction for them. So they have a focus and a goal.
Yeah.
And the goal isn't just to change interest rates. The goal is to keep the economy moving.
Got it.
Keep the dollar strong.
Sure.
So they will factor in all those components as we go forward. So they're not just like, hey, we're just going to hit the brakes and we don't care if this causes a car accident, we're just going to hit the brakes.
Sure.
No, they're always re-examining.
So they prognosticate and they tell us that they're going to meet 7 times this year. They're going to raise the rates every time. But if the economy is constricting at too fast of a rate as a result of the rate hikes, they might change their plan like they did in 2018.
Yes.
Is what you're saying.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's just, you got to keep track of what's happening in the market. Will the rates increase? Yes.
Yeah.
That's guaranteed. So if you're thinking about waiting, understand the change versus the benefit. Like if you're going to wait and you're expecting prices to drop, how much do they need to drop by in order to compensate for the change in rate? Because that's going to affect your payment. And then how does that factor into your long-term plan? So there's a lot more conversation that has to happen, a deeper conversation.
We had a little technical difficulty here, but got right back on track. Hope you're enjoying the episode.
Let's start that over again. Okay. So before we wrap up, you wanted to discuss about the different types of lenders and how they differ?
I wanted to touch on this because when we're talking about appraisals, give you an example. You talk about an appraiser that comes in, adjusts for an area, okay? A brick and mortar institution, that's like a Chase, Wells Fargo, Bank of America. Those are places you can walk into. They use more of a national appraisal management company. Okay, so it deals with appraisers as a broad spectrum for the nation. Okay, and they don't isolate good appraisers all the time in the area. Okay. So what happens is sometimes you'll get an out of the area appraiser. Maybe you've had appraisers that have had dings on their history. So you don't know really what you're getting with a brick and mortar institution. Sometimes the appraisal comes in just fine. I'm not saying that it would come in bad, but you're really rolling the dice on that one, okay? Brokerage, what a broker is a broker is somebody who is outside of the banking system and is sending these loans to a company like Chase, like UWM, like Loan Depot, and they are procuring the clients first and bringing that loan to these banks, and that bank now uses the same kind of management system, and depending upon the area may have some struggles. Okay, they could have struggles in the Big Bear area because there's only a certain pool of appraisers that are in that area, and depending on how much they pay may determine how much attention they get. Okay. Direct lenders have their own pool of appraisers that they've vetted, and they typically check off the ones that aren't working well within their system. So they have still a pool of appraisers and a management company, but they've been refined a little bit more. So they have certain appraisers that they're comfortable working with that have worked well as far as time frames, that are kind and courteous to clients. They schedule well. So there's a lot of things they check the boxes on, okay? And so you'll notice that there can be a difference in those appraisals based on the type of lending institution you're dealing with. Because they'll, I've had people that tell me, well, Chase brought in my value $50,000 less. They come to work with us. we end up bringing it in at value, and the question is how could you bring it in at value? And it depends on the appraiser. Does the appraiser know the market? Are they familiar with the things that are happening in the market and adjustments? Neighborhoods, crossing a street could be something different. You know, you may have a certain neighborhood with certain values, but you cross over that street and everything's completely different.
Del Amo.
Yes, okay, same, yeah, exactly. You could be in Lakewood versus Long Beach. Little things like that change your values and what you can pull as far as comparables. Once again, a good appraiser, doesn't matter what system they're in, will have, will be able to identify good neighborhoods and all of that. The problem is appraisers get overworked. And in the market that we've had, they were constantly out there running, and so were the good ones, especially the good ones. So you're going to see a difference in the market on appraisals, and just know that that could be an adjustment period as we go through this, just like it was when prices were increasing.
Sure.
We're going to see that as we go flat. Okay?
Yeah.
So those are just a bit of a touch of difference between brokers and direct lenders, and just to kind of keep people to help people understand the process that happens sometimes.
So when you're sourcing the appraisal, you go through a, what's it called?
An appraisal management system.
And the appraisal management system, you can select which company of appraisers that you want this appraisal to happen with. And if you have a bad experience with one, you can say, let's go with this company, but not the individual appraiser, or how does that work?
If you have different management companies, you can, okay? It is done by a pool of appraisers, though.
Sure.
Okay, so if I go to a management company, they have a grouping of appraisers. I don't know who's being selected. Okay, but if we've had complaints, if people have been rude, if they've been dinged, we can make requests that this person not be on our panel anymore. Okay. But we still have to have a panel of people. And it's not like just because I made one complaint about an appraiser, that's going to change them being able to work with us. But it is noted. Okay. And you really, it's not about them bringing in the values low. That can get an appraiser dinged. It's more about, were they courteous? Were they on time, and were they responsive? Okay. If they're not any of those things, then that becomes a problem. You can't get appointments, and it's hard to get those properties examined in a good time.
No, that has been one of the biggest variables in my career, is just not knowing who is going to do this appraisal and what they're going to consider a comp. And is the seller going to have a good experience with them? Because if you already have a somewhat difficult escrow going, you don't need any variables coming in and making it even worse. You know, and so having a great appraiser, my mom's an appraiser, you know, and so I know this world from like the inside. I've never been an appraiser, but I know the value of it. And I also know the struggles that they've been through over the last few years with this just never-ending hike in property values and just trying to bring it in at value. You know, and it's been a tall order, maintaining their integrity, but also not, you know, not killing deals that, you know, that have the legs to move forward.
And they're overworked. You know, a lot of times, like I said, the good ones are worked a lot, you know, because they're at the top of the list, and so they're given first right of refusal on a lot of these, and you know, they can't do them all. And it just ends up, it can be tiring. Just like anybody being overworked, it can just wear you down.
It's really incredible. Yeah, absolutely. The amount of work that goes into an individual appraisal. I mean, they don't just look at the comps. They have to drive by the comps and make sure the property is as it's presented and stuff like that.
Like,
you know,
during
it's a lot.
COVID, they were still going into properties. They'd have to be masked up. And, you know, you got to think they're going into someone's house, and you know, what were they dealing with in that time too? So.
Absolutely, man. Well, hey, I think that's a good place to wrap it. And next time, I'd like to talk about prepping your house for sale.
Nice.
We're moving into the spring. And maybe just like a 5-point system of just getting your place ready to go and optimizing that ultimate sale price.
Sounds good.
Yeah, man. Absolutely. All right. We'll see you guys next time.
Thanks, guys. Bye.